Have you heard the term speculative fiction and you're not exactly sure what that means? Let's find out together. My name is XP Lovecat and I'm a developmental editor and book coach for fiction. And I love helping people figure out what genre their book is and where it fits in the mass of books out there. I was a bit curious to understand the roots of the term speculative fiction, and I actually did a little bit of research to see how this search term has increased in popularity over time. So using Google Trends, I put together a graph of the average monthly search volume over the last 20-ish years. You'll see it started pretty low and then it's been steady from 2010 to like 2021-ish, and the last 3 years has seen a significant spike in using this term. A short history lesson here. This term was originally coined by Robert Heinlein. He first mentions it in his essay called On the Writing of Speculative Fiction, which will be linked in the description if you want to give it a read. Now, at that time, he was using the term more as an alternative term for science fiction, which is the genre that he wrote in. In this essay, he talks about boiling down these two story types to writing about gadgets or writing about people. He goes on to talk a little bit about his style, which was more people focused, and that there's really only 3 main plot points. But to shift our focus back to this speculative fiction term, in 1949, Robert talks a little bit more about what he means. Speculative fiction is not fantasy fiction, as it rules out the use of anything as material, which violates established scientific fact, laws of nature, call it what you will. It must be possible to the universe as we know it. So this is a relatively narrow view of what speculative fiction is, and it basically says, yeah, you can have crazy, weird things going on in the book, but they have to be grounded in reality. It needs to be some sort of thing that we could imagine happening, even if it's not currently happening. Under this definition, things like time travel or dragons or something that feasibly we don't think could exist in our world, then it would be considered fantasy under his definition. Margaret Atwood had a definition that's pretty similar to this, and she states that speculative fiction is literature that deals with scenarios that are possible within the realm of known science, distinguishing it from pure science fiction, which she views as focusing more on futuristic and technologically driven scenarios. Atwood emphasizes the plausibility and grounded nature of speculative fiction, often rooted in present day or near future settings. When I think about this term, that feels like a more dated definition for what in modern times we use as more of an umbrella term for a lot of different genres. So a wider view of this term is actually something similar to what the Speculative Literature Foundation defines on their website. Speculative literature is a catch-all term meant to inclusively span the breadth of fantastic literature, encompassing literature ranging from hard science fiction to epic fantasy to ghost stories to horror to folk and fairy tales to slipstream to magical realism to modern myth-making and more. And there are several authors and critics that view the term more widely now as well. And a lot of the focus seems to be on encouraging readers to explore their own world and question things and think about the possibilities that we don't normally experience in our current reality. So while the historical view is focusing on speculating the possible, the more current and a broader term of this is speculating the impossible too. So I am going to get to why the breakdown of this term actually matters for you and the books you're writing, but I do want to dive a little bit into the subgenres of the speculative fiction term. So first we have fantasy, which uses magical and supernatural elements as the core part of the narrative. And of course, all of these genres have further subgenres, so things like high fantasy, which would be Lord of the Rings, or low fantasy, closer to Harry Potter, and many more subgenres. Next, we have science fiction, which is revolving around the potential of scientific advancements and discoveries to create scenarios that challenge our understanding of the world and the universe. Some subgenres of this would be hard science fiction, like The Martian, or we have things like space opera, cyberpunk, steampunk, etc. The next major genre under speculative fiction is horror, which tends to evoke feelings of fear, dread, and terror in the audience, and often explores themes of the supernatural, with the macabre, the grotesque, delving into darker aspects of human experience and imagination. And some subgenres of this would be gothic horror, psychological horror, supernatural, slasher, and more. Another main genre is magical realism, where the world is so grounded in reality, but fantastical elements are considered normal in the world. And one of the most popular examples of this is 100 Years of Solitude by Marquez. And finally, we have fairy tales and folklore, which features fantastical and magical elements characterized usually by their simplicity. And of course, this would include things like Grimm's fairy tales. So I'm curious, what is your favorite subgenre that falls under the speculative fiction umbrella? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so why does this actually matter? What we're calling different genres and how we categorize the books that you're writing? The main reason is because you need to be able to market your book. And you need to be able to identify the audience that is actually going to enjoy your book the most. And therefore, if they enjoy it, then they're going to start recommending it to their friends and things can snowball from there. But if you get your book into the wrong reader's hands and they dislike it, things probably won't end very well for the success of your book. So when we're talking about genre, speculative fiction, I think, is a good umbrella term that you can use to identify yourself as a writer and the work that you do. So for example, as an editor, I usually say I edit speculative fiction because I edit all the cool junk that falls under that, and it's an easier way than to sit there listing all of the specific types of work that I'm interested in doing. So that might be an easy way when you're doing elevator pitches or introducing yourself to people, or maybe even on your website, you write speculative fiction. If you write in multiple genres, that's an easy way to help identify yourself. Now, when it comes to actually marketing your book, you're going to want to get more specific than speculative fiction. So if you just say that term, people aren't going to really know where to put that on the shelves in a bookstore, which is really important. Particularly if you are aiming to traditionally publish, you're going to want to get into the nitty-gritty, finding exactly what type of fantasy, what type of sci-fi, whatever it is you're writing, being very specific about that, and also pulling comps of books that are similar to yours. All this means that you're going to get the right agent for your book and get your book into the reader's hands who are going to enjoy it the most. If you want more speculative fiction insights, feel free to join my newsletter, which will be linked in the description below. Thank you for watching and happy writing.